The letter arrived, crisp and final, declaring war on my peaceful retirement plan. Ethan Vance, former Army Corps of Engineers combat engineer, had bought a beautiful home in Willowbrook Estates, Colorado, specifically for the promise of quiet, private lake access. That access, centered on the pristine Mirror Lake, was supposed to heal the years of service-related stress. The letter, however, stated my lake access was a grave misunderstanding. Mr. Vance, your use of Mirror Lake is restricted to founding member families only. Any violation will result in an immediate fine of $50 per day. The signature belonged to Bethany Cromwell, the HOA President. Bethany wasn't just an HOA leader. She was a real estate attorney who ran the neighborhood with a blend of corporate control and petty tyranny. I initially scoffed at the $50 fine, but Bethany was relentless. The first major confrontation came at an HOA meeting Bethany organized, calling for an emergency vote to charge all new residents a $500 annual lake maintenance fee. I stood up and demanded 5 years of HOA, financial records, and meeting minutes, citing specific Colorado state statutes. Bethany, pale with rage, had to grudgingly comply. That night, the selective enforcement began. Bethany used her power to nitpick my property. $100 fine for the incorrect shade of beige mailbox, $500 fine for excessive landscaping, and veiled threats of property lien. She was attempting to financially intimidate me out of the neighborhood. I turned her tactics against her. I spent 2 days photographing identical violations by founding member homes. Untamed hedges, unapproved paint colors, visible trash cans, all of which were conveniently ignored by Bethany. I hired an external attorney, Jane Kowalski, who quickly identified the corruption. Bethany's husband's construction company had received over $200,000 in no-bid contract from the HOA for minor repairs, a blatant breach of fiduciary duty. The conflict escalated further when someone vandalized my mailbox. My hidden security camera, initially installed to document HOA violations, provided the crucial breakthrough. The footage captured Bethany Cromwell herself, creeping onto my property with a high-powered camera, taking pictures of my supposed violations. This documented trespass gave Jane legal grounds for a restraining order and potential criminal charges. A lifeline appeared in Frank Rivera, a former Navy veteran who had lived in Willowbrook for 20 years. Disgusted by Bethany's control, Frank provided Jane with 2 decades of financial documents that proved a systemic pattern of corruption, back to the community's inception. The game-changing discovery came from Jane's meticulous examination of the county records. The HOA's entire claim to Mirror Lake was built on sand. The lake was unowned. Jane discovered that the developer who established Willowbrook Estates went bankrupt in 1983 before legally completing the transfer of the lake parcel. Mirror Lake had never been legally conveyed to the HOA or any private entity. It was, for all intents and purposes, unowned county property with significant back taxes owed. Ethan, Jane announced, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Under Colorado law, you can acquire that lake at public auction. The acquisition plan, Mirror Lake, a beautiful 15-acre body of water, was scheduled for a public tax auction, a final attempt by the county to clear the long-standing tax debt. The starting bid was the accumulated back taxes, a meager $3,200. I immediately liquidated my remaining retirement savings, securing $43,000 for the bidding war. My plan was audacious. I would become the sole, legal owner of Mirror Lake, with the absolute right to set the rules for access and, most importantly, charge a fee for entry. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing an industrial-grade, commercial-quality private boat dock, built to withstand the traffic I knew I would be generating. Bethany, relying on her local contacts, eventually discovered the auction notice. Her reaction was instantaneous panic. She summoned an emergency, illegally convened meeting where she publicly admitted that the HOA had spent decades and hundreds of thousands of dollars maintaining an asset it never legally owned. The admission of this fraud, captured on tape by Frank Rivera, was the nail in her criminal coffin. She desperately tried to rally $235,000 for a counterbid, filed several baseless lawsuits, and even tried to bribe the county clerk to postpone the auction. The auction day. The crowd outside the county courthouse was a mix of local media, angry Willowbrook residents, and a contingent of veterans led by Frank Rivera, all there to support me. The bidding started at $3,200. Bethany, sweat pouring down her face despite the cold Colorado air, raised the bid with every meager fund she could scrape together. The bidding war was brutal and public. Finally, when the bidding reached $68,000, Bethany threw in her last available funds, $70,000. "Do I hear $75,000? The auctioneer asked. $70,000 and 1 cent. I announced, placing my final bid, securing the title. The gavel slammed down. Sold. To Ethan Vance. I had just legally purchased Mirror Lake. The aftermath speech. I walked through the stunned crowd and gave a victory speech that Channel 7 News carried live. I methodically exposed the embezzlement, the no-bid contracts, the harassment, and the illegal lake claims, presenting irrefutable evidence against Bethany. Bethany, standing nearby, began to hyperventilate. She shrieked, "You can't do this, Vance. The lake is for the community." It was, I corrected, looking directly into the camera. "But now it's mine." At that moment, the deputy sheriff, who had been waiting patiently, moved in. Bethany Cromwell, screaming uncontrollably, was arrested for felony theft, conspiracy, and criminal misuse of public funds right on the courthouse steps. The final revenge. I announced the new fee structure for the newly christened Mirror Lake Recreation Area. Access is free for all military veterans and senior citizens, I stated. For current and former members of the Willowbrook Estates HOA board, the access fee will be $100 per hour to use my dock. Cash only, and all fines imposed upon me are now void. Justice served. Bethany Cromwell resigned in disgrace, received an 18-month prison sentence, and was ordered to pay $400,000 in restitution. Her husband's political career was finished. The Willowbrook Estates HOA, humbled and broken, was forced to elect a new board. Property values, initially stabilized by the resolution of the ownership chaos, began to climb as the corruption was rooted out. I established the Mirror Lake Recreation Fund for conservation and military families. The community, replacing fear with cooperation, began working with me, respecting the boundaries I had earned. My victory was not just about owning a lake. It was about demonstrating that no HOA Karen, no matter how politically connected, can fight an individual who uses legal strategy and financial leverage to enforce justice. The most beautiful revenge is always the most satisfyingly legal one. Tell me what you think. Was charging the former HOA members $100 per hour for lake access justified, or should Ethan have simply banned them? What is the most satisfying legal loophole you have ever used against an arrogant authority figure? Share your thoughts, and let us know what legal loophole Ethan should exploit next.